So I work as the Workforce Transformation Director at Intermountain Health. We're based in Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States. We have 35 hospitals and 400 clinics, so I support all the great work that happens across the organization and our 70,000 employees. I also spend time at the University of Utah as an adjunct professor in the Operations and Information Systems Department, and that's really where a lot of this content is driven from. The interactions that I'm having with students on a regular basis to hear their concerns around what does the future of work look like? If I invest in my education now, is there going to be a job for me in 4 years when I graduate? So I spend a lot of time in conversations with students as well. And then I'm also a student myself. I'm in the second year of a doctoral program in healthcare leadership at Aspen University, also based in the United States. And my focus of my dissertation is around leadership confidence, particularly as it applies to imposter syndrome. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then AI-enabled development, which is a good tie-in to this topic that we've been discussing today. So setting the stage just a little bit, I really enjoyed the earlier conversations, the presentations, and the keynotes, because I think this is all very timely, right? I think we're all saying similar things, approaching it from kind of our own unique discipline and area of expertise, but for me, this is why this conversation matters now. And I'll talk a little bit about this and then zoom out to kind of the global scale. But leadership today, there's lots of things that define leadership, but here are a few things. Accelerating AI adoption, right? That's the entire focus of what we've been discussing today. But there's rising complexity and ambiguity. There's a lot that are being asked of our leaders. And so the constant visibility and scrutiny, Denise, you mentioned that a little bit as well, right? Inside, there's monitoring and surveillance that's happening. So all of our leadership decisions are being questioned and scrutinized. And there really are fewer clear answers, right? The more data that we have, that adds to the complexity. So there's additional judgment that needs to happen in all of our decision making. So let me zoom out real quickly. This has been my experience thus far as I've met with organizations throughout the world, but you may have similar experiences or maybe have things to add to this. But AI adoption is uneven across different regions and sectors, right? Even in the United States, where I primarily work, we see a wide variety of organizations that are enabling their workforce to take advantage of these tools, others that are being more resistant and hesitating a little bit. I talked about that leadership visibility, but it's increasing everywhere, right? As more of our decisions are visible, especially for publicly traded companies in the United States, we see that those decisions being questioned all the time. And then what I'm going to primarily focus a little bit more on today is this confidence gap where it widens as capability grows, and we see that it's nonlinear in most instances. And then HR leaders are continued. The expectation is for us to continue to deliver even without uniform readiness across our workforce. So these are some key indicators or things that I've noticed and experienced, maybe similar in your organization or across companies that you work with. But ultimately, what we've seen stalls transformation most often is hesitation being disguised as caution, right? We want to be cautious about this, but really we're hesitating because we have that uncertainty. There's an over-reliance on data to avoid judgment, right? So we say, well, I want to be 100% certain, so I'm going to wait until that next data point comes in, and then maybe it'll validate my decision. But we're deferring or deflecting judgment by an over-reliance on it. And then there's this fear of being exposed as not ready, right? We don't want to be that one that says, no, we're going to drag our feet a little bit, or let's pump the brakes, right? We want to go, and take advantage of this. So we have that fear of that, of being exposed. And then leaders waiting for certainty that never comes. I would like to submit to you that the type of confidence I'm talking about is not this overconfident, boasting and arrogance and what we call being cocky, right, in the United States. But this is really the confidence that comes from making good, sound business decisions, and I'll talk a little bit more about indicators of that as well. But when we have confident leadership, we are able to speed up the decision and the quality of those decisions. So this is a key differentiator from effective leadership, is that they have that ability to make good, sound decisions in a timely manner. And then there's a willingness to experiment, right? We talk about fail fast or fail forward, right? Where we have that ability to take risks and we can experiment so that we're able to make the best decision possible. And then, of course, the adoption of AI and analytics, and then overall team trust and psychological safety. So what happens when capability actually outpaces your identity or your leadership confidence? This might be, I hear this quite a bit in the teams that I'm working with, but they say, I understand the tools, I can explain the strategy, but I'm not sure I trust myself yet, right? And so you may have had similar experiences in your organization. So this confidence gap that I'm talking about does have a name, and I'll submit to you, there's probably different ways to look at this, but for me, we often hear this described as imposter syndrome. If this isn't something you're familiar with, this is a concept where you have evidence of success throughout your career or in your current position, but there's this nagging feeling that you're going to be found out as a fraud, or someone's going to say you don't belong, right? And there's no evidence that that's the case, but there's this nagging feeling that you feel you're going to be found out or asked to, leave the organization. But this is not a personality flaw. Sometimes we say, well, they're just not a very confident individual, or they just need more time and they'll build more confidence. It's not related to their personality, but it is a predictable response to rapid change. So we talk about the speed at which technology is changing. This is also happening across all of our business areas, right? The influence that AI is having trickles across all areas. And it can be intensified by these AI-driven decision opportunities, right? Where we no longer have control of every single step in that process, and so it affects our ability to feel confident in the decisions that we're making. So HR, where do we sit in this, right? That's ultimately the focus of what we've been talking about today. But we have expectations, or what HR is asked to deliver over here on the left side. And then over on the right side, we have what we're rarely given. And the gap between this is what we call this confidence gap. This is where expectations and support we have that gap. So let me talk a little bit about some of the things that HR is asked to deliver. So we have this AI readiness, right? That's what this conference is all about. We want to make sure that our workforce is prepared to adopt all this cutting-edge technology. There's leadership capabilities that we're asked to deliver, right? Ethical governance of these structures and tools that we're putting in place. And then ultimately, HR owns the culture and the trust of the organization, right? We partner with operational leaders and other senior leaders across the organization, but we really own that across the system. What we're rarely given, though, is time for leaders to build confidence, right? We have these expectations. HR usually, at least in my experience, is brought in towards the end, right? Say, okay, now it's up to you to help implement this strategy. We have this talent acquisition approach we want to take, or this new business that we're going to develop. Then we're brought in and say, okay, it's time to deliver on it. But we're rarely given the time to actually build up the confidence for our leaders. And then safe practice environments, I talked a little bit about that as well. And then coaching at the moment of decision, that's what I want to focus kind of the next couple of slides on. And then the psychological readiness metrics are rarely given those as well. So this is not a talk about leadership development. There's experts out there, right, that you can consult with. But some of my observations that I've noticed, traditional leadership development tends to miss. So they do focus on knowledge transfer. We have great training and kind of these one-time events where we do checklists and sign off on competencies. But what they often overlook is this psychological readiness, right? This confidence under pressure and just ongoing making sense of the world around us, right? The data that's coming in at a rapid pace. So you've heard this mentioned multiple times throughout the day today, but where I've seen it personally, AI tend to fail is more when it's viewed as the authority, right? The evaluator. It's replacing judgment. We turn it over and say, well, that's what the AI told us to do, so we did it, right? So that's where we see it fail. Where we see it succeed more frequently is when it's actually viewed as a coach, a thought partner, and we use it for ongoing making sense of the world around us. So this is not a new concept. The concept of coaching, in fact, has been around for a long time. We use certified coaches at Intermountain, where we go through a certification program, and then leaders have the opportunity to partner with coaches in order to assist them in their decision-making process. But this AI-enabled coaching creates additional opportunities that I'd like to submit to you. Creating reflection moments where a lot of times in leadership, we don't always have a chance to reflect back on the decisions we made, right? The next decision now is sitting on our desk, we have to make it, and then we move on. But having this AI-enabled coach allows you to create those reflection moments. And then testing decisions safely. That's a critical part of us being able to experiment, to fail fast, as I mentioned earlier, and provide context, not just answers, right? We're not copying and pasting decisions from an AI tool into our strategy, right? It's providing this context and additional critical thinking. It can also reduce isolation in leadership. All right. So this is what I call the confidence capability readiness model or framework. And there's nothing unique or revolutionary about this in particular, but what I'd like to submit is that this can help not only increase that confidence, but this is a flywheel, right? This is not a one-time cycle or a one-time process. This can get the momentum going, especially if you're stuck in AI adoption or really in any other area, but kind of framed it up as AI for this one. So when skills are visible, right, we've talked about that a lot today, when you have the skills intelligence and you have the clarity around what skills your organization has or what gaps you have, then you can more clearly define your role expectations, right? When that leads to clarity in their role, they can then implement coaching into their workflow. How do I engage with either an AI-enabled coach or a certified coach that's available? That can then create that environment for psychological safety, which enforces the confidence to act. So what does this actually look like in practice? In the organizations that I've worked with, and in Intermountain in particular, we've seen as they embed coaching into leadership programs, it then allows us to use the skill intelligence to reduce ambiguity. We create those micro-learning opportunities where it wasn't a course I watched a video on last year and I forgot all about it, but I have an opportunity, if I have the question, I can refer back to that and then incorporate that micro-learning into my reflection loop. And then as I support leaders through real decisions, we see some of the experiences that leaders have here. They report less isolation, better questions, there's faster judgment, and then a greater willingness to act, which is a critical part of leadership in today's day and age. All right. So we're getting close to the end here, but I wanted to kind of submit some key deliverables or actual observations from implementing this kind of coach approach in the environments that I've worked in. But we've seen stronger team functioning. There's data that supports faster role transitions where people feel like they're fully onboarded into their new leadership roles. There's also greater confidence in decision making. Confidence sometimes can be a little tricky to measure, right? Because it tends to be, well, how do you feel in the moment? But there are validated instruments that can help support and show overall greater confidence in decision-making process. And then higher adoption of digital tools. Ultimately, that's our goal, right? Particularly in HR and in my role in workforce transformation. I don't just want to roll out the tool and then have it fail and then we go and find the next tool, right? We want to ensure adoption and ultimately deliver the value that we're all seeking. So without confidence, these are some reasons why why IAI is not successful, but we see leaders defer responsibility, judgment then becomes automated, accountability erodes, and trust declines, which is just a recipe for disaster. I know it's a little small in there. I'm just going to talk through it at a high level because we're quickly coming up on time. But what leaders often see are AI tools introduced with efficiency promises. We see adoption stalling or staying superficial, and then we label quiet resistance as change fatigue, right? There's so many changes that we need to pump the brakes a little bit, right? But what's actually happening is we've heard this multiple times, but there's fear of your role eroding or being completely eliminated. There's tools that are perceived as evaluators, but they're not partners, right? And then the confidence erodes before your capability can grow. So when you infuse confidence into this process, we see safer experimentation. We see faster adoption of these tools. We see that time is then reclaimed to redirect towards more satisfying work, right? Using your judgment where human judgment is needed, building in creativity and relationship building. So I would submit to you that this is not a technology failure, that it's a confidence design failure, which is why we're talking about this topic. So what is HR role in this, right? Because we partner with IT, we partner with these other areas of the organization, but this is what if I was to distill all this down into kind of one slide, we are viewed as this ethical kind of system designer for AI, right? So when you think of these 4 quadrants, the systems are in place that have designed confidence into them. We have the alignment across these different areas, right? Whether it's AI, learning, culture. Then we act as ethical stewards of this adoption, and then finally we shape that psychological safety across the entire organization. So the global leadership imperative. Why am I here trying to preach this message? This ultimately is what I believe, and what the research that I've gathered shows, that these are the true leaders of the future that are going to be successful and that are going to continue to change the world. Leaders that can think clearly under pressure, leaders that partner effectively with AI, right? Not turning all the judgment over to them, but it's this partnership that we see. They lead with confidence, not absolute certainty. If you're sitting around waiting to be 100% certain in something, you're going to be waiting a long time. But you lead with confidence. You lead your teams. They confide in you and feel like you're leading them in the right direction. And then you create trust in complex systems. So if there's anything you take away from this, it's let's design for confidence, and then performance will follow. So if this resonated, I'd be happy to continue the conversation. My LinkedIn profile is down there on the bottom, so you're welcome to send me an email. But if you have any of these types of questions, where are leaders hesitating? Where is confidence silently breaking down? And then how ready are we psychologically, not just technically? Because technically you can be in a good spot, right? You can check all the boxes and say, yeah, we're ready to go. But it's a little more difficult to gauge how ready you are psychologically. So you're welcome to scan this. This will just let you download a copy of the slide deck, or you can just go to that URL. But I think I'm out of time, so I'll hand it back over to you.